Hello, hello, and welcome to Golden Threads, weaving ancient wisdom into modern bliss. I'm your host, Helena Grant, and what a supreme delight to welcome Dr. Carolyn Elliott to our stage. Dr. Carolyn Elliott has helped thousands of her students and coaching clients make dramatic, positive changes in their lives via shadow integration and applied occult philosophy. She's the author of the best-selling Missing Key to Manifestation Magic, Existential Kink, Unmask Your Shadow and Embrace Your Power, and the cult favorite creativity guide, Awaken Your Genius. With her husband, Taya, and the help of an excellent team, she runs Wealth, the alchemical community where leaders shift into 1,000% better money, love, and inspiration. She earned her doctorate in critical and cultural studies at the University of Pittsburgh. Our conversation today is titled Existential Kink and the Alchemical Marriage. Carolyn Elliott, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Golden Threads.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Helena. Thank you.
Truly such an honor. I need to let everyone know that I am one of those thousands of people that you have helped so much, and my gratitude for you and the work that you do is infinite, absolutely infinite. And to be able to share your message with this audience really is a true honor. So Carolyn, I would love for you to start us off. You know, we think a lot about this sort of concept of personal development and the journey of personal discovery. You don't want to think necessarily about the destination. But in tuning into our conversation today, I really thought that we could start out talking about a destination that you have in mind of when people use these tools of existential kink and the alchemical marriage. What does that Aeon look like, the new Aeon in your vision that you really want to help deliver us towards? Please paint that picture for us, that landscape.
Wow, thank you for the question. So when you refer to the Aeon, are you referring to like what that would look like on a global scale? Or, okay, so the idea with what I hope people get to through my work, through their work that I'm nudging them towards, is a union of the conscious and the unconscious minds, making the unconscious conscious, which Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. And I've never heard truer words. And I feel like as it is, most of us humans are very driven by unconscious compulsions where we kind of act out these patterns again and again without really realizing what we're doing. And they're usually patterns that have to do with some kind of deep belief in feeling unsafe and scarce, and it could be from childhood trauma, generational trauma, karma, who knows, wherever it is, it's in us. And my vision is for a world where we succeed in making those unconscious patterns and the taboo desires that drive them fully conscious, accepted, loved, integrated, to the point that they just don't have that compulsive power anymore to shape our behavior and get us to act out in destructive ways. And through that, my hope is that we can be in a relationship with other humans and with the world that is really elegant, really creative, really blissful and fun and expansive, instead of the kind of, I would say, somewhat contracted and grasping and sort of way that most of us seem to be relating to everything now.
Oh, that sounds like a beautiful world.
Thank you. Yes, it sounds a bit utopian, but I truly believe that it's actually very possible within a short time, actually.
And what do you feel like is the primary tool to attain that?
Well, I'm immensely prejudiced in my opinion. I think one of the primary tools is something I came up with called Existential Kink. Actually, it's not true to say that I came up with it entirely, because the premise behind Existential Kink, which I guess we could explain to your audience. Um, Before I explain it, I'll just real quick say that it's not entirely original to me, in that the founders of psychotherapy, psychoanalysis were very familiar with these ideas. They just sort of haven't made it into current pop psychological awareness, because these ideas are extremely offensive to people's egos. So the idea is basically this, that it's a universal human trait to unconsciously take pleasure in frustrating, painful, negative situations. Um, and through that unconscious pleasure, we actually, without knowing it, seek out those situations again and again, so we can keep receiving that secret, so secret that it's not even known to us consciously, pleasure. Um, and this drives, in my personal experience, in my work with my clients and many students, um, it can drive people to stay at a sort of a small or uncomfortable level of income, um, sort of, and feel like they're unable to break out of that no matter how hard they work or what they do. Or people keep getting into the same kind of romantic relationships with somebody who's the same sort of jerk over and over again, no matter how much they set the intention to meet, Mr. Ms. Wonderful. And just everywhere, in creative blocks, in health blocks, we create these patterns in absolutely every area of our life. And so many of us are aware that we do this, but we just don't know how to stop doing it. And the idea with existential kink, which is the same idea, so the founding fathers of psychoanalysis, Freud, Carl Jung, Jacques Lacan, part of why dream analysis became such a big thing is they realized that they tried straight up telling people, like, you are secretly enjoying this thing that you claim that you hate. But people would be like, what are you talking about? How dare you? I'm tormented by this. And so they stopped that, and instead they were just like, okay, well, people's own dreams will point this out to them, because our, the intelligence that speaks in our dreams is our larger self, and it's always giving us commentary on our lives. So we'll just help people understand their dreams so they can get it from their own dream, and then they won't be able to deny it. It was sort of the whole idea behind all of that. Most people don't know that's one of the reasons why dream interpretation was such a big part of early psychoanalysis. So what I found with existential kink is, well, I do offend people's egos a lot sometimes, but I try to be as gentle and as humorous and as sharing from my own experience as possible, so as to get under those booby traps, and just help people realize that whenever we have a situation in our life that kind of keeps recurring and it's really sucks, and it's because some part of us wildly, passionately, exquisitely enjoys it. And so the first task is to become aware of that. And the second task is, once you're aware of it, to not resent it or regret it, and instead to really love and honor that, that some part of me is desiring and enjoying and having just a freaky old time with whatever situation in my life that it is that I feel so tormented by, whether it's some kind of scarcity of love or money or time or creativity, inspiration. It's usually some form of scarcity. Um, and give myself permission to get off on it, to really fully, consciously, deliberately go into and welcome and receive the pleasure that's there without guilt and without shame. And that's why I call it existential kink, because it's like it's taking pleasure in something that's painful. And in bedrooms and dungeons all around the world, people set up scenes where they go into these experiences of intense sensation, pain, pleasure, power dynamics, and experience things that maybe ordinarily they wouldn't like if they just randomly happened to them on the street. If somebody just started whipping them while they walk down the street, they probably wouldn't like it. But within a certain context and within a certain set of um, consent and safe words and everything, people can open up and receive pleasure in sensations of being whipped. And I found that the human mind has a great capacity for that kind of surrender. And really all it takes is deliberately setting aside some time with myself, setting up consent, setting up a container wherein I say to myself, okay, I'm going to take 15 minutes and I'm going to give myself permission to just sink inward and let myself relax and become aware of whatever little bits of pleasure or desire might be present for me in this terrible situation I'm in of lack and scarcity and not enough. And as I've done that, I've found that I can rather readily make conscious a whole lot of pleasure, sometimes even to the point of actual sexual orgasm, sometimes to the point of just like a big release in my heart and lots of laughter. Sometimes tears come, but usually something can move. So existential kink is a very somatic practice. It's very much about embodiment and working with the energies and the electricity in the body. And I guess another thing that I think is very interesting, well, is that as I liberate the energy that's been like compulsively, sneakily, sideways, savoring some painful situation, that energy then becomes available to me to deliberately, consciously use to create other things, which is just endlessly fascinating to me. So I've been teaching this process to other people, and Helena, you of course joined me to learn the coaching process behind it, and it was so wonderful to have you there. And yeah, I think that's what I have to say about that right now.
That was so beautiful. And honestly, Carolyn, I've heard you explain it obviously so many times. I've learned how to help people, coach people through it. And still, every time you talk about it, there's always something new that comes to the surface. And as you were describing what happens when you liberate that energy, the term like demons getting reassigned came to mind. And that conversation that we have, that we all have demons. We all have angels, we all have demons, and demons actually really want to do heavy lifting. And so when we deny them, when we repress them into the unconscious mind, they're just kicking around like teenagers with nothing to do, and they're very destructive. But when you give them, the love and approval and acceptance and recognition of their abilities and their powers and say, oh, hey, let's go do this really other fun thing that we all want. Like, let's get all of us, get on board. It creates a whole new life, a whole new reality, and a whole new experience.
Yes. I bet your listeners would like to hear about your experience with existential kink, Helena.
So for me, I discovered you and your work, Carolyn, on a day when I decided to answer the question completely truthfully. The common question, how are you? Normally we say, I'm fine, I'm good. My approach is usually to deflect. I don't even answer. I just ask the other person how they are, And this particular day, something just said to me, answer honestly. And I said to the woman, I am realizing that I want to love all parts of me, even the parts of me that I hate, that I don't think should be there. I want to learn to love myself that way. And she said, oh, you have to read this blog post by Carolyn Elliott. I'm going to send it to you. This is exactly what she talks about. And reading it, I thought, oh my God, this is the missing piece. I had tried the law of attraction. I had read The Secret. I was doing the affirmations. Intellectually, I understood it, but I was like, why am I still miserable? I have all these beautiful things in my life, but like there's just this deep, deep emptiness in me that is perpetuating itself. No matter how hard I try, no matter where I put my effort, no matter what I think I'm doing to alleviate that, there was just this sort of pall over my life. And I knew that I was capable of incredible happiness, extraordinary joy, and that I could help other people find that, but it wasn't authentic. And so discovering existential kink, I think particularly for me, it was the somatic approach, that it was bringing the thoughts, it was bringing the feelings down from up here, this amazing space that is the brain and the head, but like using the body as a way to process it and fully experience it. It was such a breakthrough for me and is such an incredible tool on a daily basis for me as well. I think there's always something that we can sort of apply existential kink to.
That's what I find too. I do it every day myself because I'm always like, oh, there's another thing.
There's another thing. There's another thing. And even I talk about this a lot with my clients, that even in moments of great happiness, great accomplishment, of culmination, it's a full spectrum of the human experience. There's also grief, there's also sorrow. And in saying, you know, I shouldn't feel those things, I feel shameful about what I'm feeling, you're really like just carving away at yourself in a way that then kind of, we call it, you know, coming out sideways. It's like, it's going to hurt someone in a way that you don't intend to, or hurt yourself in a way that you're not aware of. So yeah, I'm a big fan of existential kink.
Beautiful. I loved what you said about I want to love the parts of myself that I hate. I feel like that's what it comes down to. It's so much. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think too, this real concept of like sublime self-love. And I feel like that's sort of what you might talk about next with the alchemical marriage.
Yes, absolutely. So I love the theme of the summit with the ancient wisdom. And I was thinking, what's the ancient wisdom that I'm most excited about? And I think it really is this idea of the alchemical marriage. So it's a strange term. A lot of people haven't heard this term, but it's really central to Western esotericism. So sort of like the line of thought that goes from Plato to Hermes Trismegistus through the European Renaissance, through Crowley and 20th century magic up to now. And what it means is a relationship, a union between the self that we walk around ordinarily thinking that we are, we could call it our ego self, which, you know, this like interior monologue that's always running about like, what am I going to eat for breakfast tomorrow? And do I need to get some new clothes? And how are my kids? And how's my partner? And, you know, all of the things that run through our head. And the big part of us, the part of us that creates our nighttime dreams, the part of us that creates our whole experience of everything. So it gets called the unconscious, and I love that term, the unconscious, since, you know, what it really means is like the unknown. Like what do we not know yet? Everything. So much. It's all of that, and it includes. I mean, sometimes the unconscious is a bit of an inadequate term because it suggests like some sort of ignorance or some sort of, you know, I don't know what, just like
Unawareness.
Yeah, or or it could suggest like the instinctual self or the animal self, which it definitely includes, but it also includes like the most divine, transcendent, we could say supra-conscious parts of us also. And so most of us, the sort of default mode in our society is to have basically no deliberate relationship with our unconscious. You know, like ordinary society encourages us to ignore our nighttime dreams, ignore our intuition, ignore, you know, definitely, like, you know, like divination is stupid according to the mainstream, all of this stuff. And what this results in, what it has resulted in, is like we're very alienated, and people are suffering. The I think, I heard this poetic term, the diseases of despair. So suicide, drug addiction, depression, and anxiety are at all-time highs in the United States. Huge. Like, suicide among young people is now a greater cause of death than car crashes. It's like, Jeeves, it's really terrifying what we're doing to ourselves and what we're doing to the planet in this level of alienation that we've been in. So what the alchemical marriage is about the ego gradually realizing, oh, hey, I thought that I was my whole self, but actually I'm not. Actually, myself with a capital S includes all of this other wondrous, amazing stuff, including all of these other wondrous characters. And I need to get into a humble, deep relationship with these other parts of myself. So there's multiple ways to do that. One way, which was the one that Carl Jung really emphasized, is dream work. Working to remember and write down and interpret your nighttime dreams. Very wonderful. There's other excellent ways using plant medicines. So things like ayahuasca, magic mushrooms in ceremonial contexts can really open up communication with that larger part of ourselves. Good old-fashioned divination, astrology, tarot, also a wonderful way to have a dialogue with this part of ourselves. And I find that existential kink is an amazing way to create a union and an agreement between the unknown parts of ourselves and the known. So let's say, for example, I keep creating financial scarcity in my life. No matter what I do, I can't make more than the same amount of money each month, and it's a small amount of money, and it sucks, and it's miserable, and I hate it, and I'm embarrassed by it, and it gives me so much anxiety, and how am I going to pay the rent and pay my bills, and what if I can never afford retirement, and my parents are going to grow up, all of these things, right? So usually my ego just fucking hates that. I just hate it. I hate it. And I blame the world and I blame myself, and so with existential kink, I can get really quiet and really let myself feel my freaky, nasty, bizarro, weird joy in this humiliating scarcity. And as I do that, as I open up and love this thing that is compulsively happening, I make it conscious, because we can only make things conscious that we love, that we are willing to totally welcome. If we're not willing to totally welcome it, we might look at it for a second and then be like, ugh, get away. And we repress it right back in. So it really takes love to make something conscious. So we love it, we get off on it. And then there's this moment of, in that, there's a union, there's an actual orgasmic union between the ego self and the larger, deeper self, where the ego self has humbled itself to the larger self, has humbled itself and said, like, hey, this thing is here. I don't really understand why it's here. I don't really know why you're doing this, creating this scarcity again and again, why you like it so much. But you know what? For just 15 minutes, I'm going to stop judging and resenting that you like it so much. And I'm just going to get on your side and just really celebrate with you and let all of your joy be present deliberately in my body, and just feel it with you. And and just celebrate you, unknown, mysterious part of me that enjoys the scarcity. Okay, let's do you. And in that humility, there's a actual union. I like to think of it in like courtly love metaphors, with like a knight, kneeling down in front of his lady in order to get her blessing. I really think that that's what we do. Our ego is like the knight that wants to go on quests, that has all these high ideals about how things should be. But really, to receive the power and the strength to fulfill those ideals, the knight needs to get down on his knees in front of the lady. And so the unconscious is the lady, that when we get down on our knees, and recognize that she always gets what she wants. She is absolutely always getting what she wants, and she always will get what she wants. and um, and my ego may have judgments about what she wants and what she's creating, but it's going to happen anyways. So when I just get down on my knees and humble and praise whatever the great lady of my unconscious is doing, then we get to come together and have that union. And what that union is what historically has been called the alchemical marriage. And, you know, it's a marriage. So if I'm able to succeed in connecting once or twice with my unconscious, that's a good start, but that's not the whole deal. It's this lifelong romance. And there's different stages of it that the great alchemical writers talked about. And one stage, the first stage of it was called by the alchemist Gerald Dorn, who was writing, I think, in the 14th century in Germany, but I might not have that remembered correctly. But anyways, Jung wrote a lot about Gerald Dorn. That the first stage in alchemy was called the Union Mentalis, which meant the unified mindset. But when he said mindset, it really means more like the unified attitude or the unified desire. Or as they say in magic, I like to say the unified will. So like most of us have very divided wills, where our ego says we want one thing, and then our unconscious and our body is like doing all this other stuff. And what Existential Kink helps to do is get it so that our conscious and our unconscious are on the same page. We're going in the same direction. And that only happens through this deep humbling. A lot of the times, though, I mean, I guess there could conceivably be other ways to do it. You know, people, if you badger your unconscious enough with affirmations, if you badger it enough with vision boards, I guess you can succeed in getting something to pass through and be accepted into its womb, and it might birth some cool synchronicities for you. But in general, I find that badgering method much less effective than the surrendering method. And then once you've surrendered and we've liberated some energy, then we can take that energy and use affirmations and use vision boards or whatever else we like to do to give shape to it. But those things are really much more effective after we've done the humbling, orgasmic work of fully celebrating what the lady is already creating. Yes, I will pass the ball to you now, Helena.
Oh my goodness, what an incredible ball to be catching. Thank you. I wanted to circle back to what you said about we can only make things conscious when we love them, when love is in play in that process. It's really, I mean, that's the key to everything, is to love everything. And then you can be so fully engaged, so fully present, and actually have that much more power over your experience and what you're bringing into the world on so many levels. And then, of course, what you were saying about the union in humility, and to hear the ego referred to as the knight, and the unconscious as the lady. I mean, that to me is like a serious mic drop, because that is not always how it's sort of organized and presented. And I think a lot of people will be able to now relate to what this concept of the ego is, because it's such an intellectual concept and we know how important it is. But when you put that visual to it, that metaphor, it really, I think, will resonate so profoundly with so many people. And actually can help us disassociate from the interaction of the ego and the unconscious in a way that we can almost like we're looking at a play, like a theater piece of the knight and the lady, and that we're the director of this interaction and what's going to come of it, instead of like, well, I'm forcing this part of me to do this and I'm denying this part of me this. It's like, oh, I can watch these two things come together, and wow, I have a huge windstorm right now. There are leaves flying everywhere and rain falling. So I think we're touching on something pretty profound here. And and also, of course, like badgering ourselves. And that is, you know, probably a little bit of the masculine patriarchal energy that we're so accustomed to, that we're programmed for. It's like, keep pounding away at something. But our unconscious mind is so much more, you know, powerful than that. It
Way more
wants
powerful.
love.
It
wants
always
love, wants
wins.
acceptance. It always wins. The lady gets what she wants. The house always wins. The unconscious is the house that we live in. So what kind of game are you playing? And what, you know, what a fun game it can be when you initiate a conversation that comes from a place of love, humility, and surrender.
Absolutely. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, I think a lot of people set out on their personal discovery and their personal development journey, and they want change.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that. Like, can people really change?
People can change so dramatically and so fast and so deeply and beautifully, it's jaw-dropping. And the way that they do that is by first doing this incredibly gross, disgusting, uncomfortable, delicious, evil, monstrous, wonderful thing of one way that I like to think of it is like this. It's like so in the existential kink world, you know, as you know, we have this saying that's immensely offensive, which is having is evidence of wanting. And I do think it's generally best applied to sort of how do I say, these kind of personal patterns that repeat. People, there's all sorts of deep metaphysical debates that could be had about larger societal things, but anyways, having is evidence of wanting. So one of the things that that means to me is that in a deep way, life is my lover. And life is always touching the exact part on my body that most yearns to be touched and is most sensitive. It's always touching that. And usually what I'm doing is I'm like trying to kick my lover life off of that spot. Like, no, not there. That's weird. Don't touch me there. Get off of me. I don't even like you. Why are you here? I'm going to break up with you. This is dumb. Get off of me. You know? Right? But life, you know, is relentlessly still making love to me, and always, always, always in contact with this very tender spot that is so, so hungry to be touched and so, so sensitive. And it's like what I find that I need to do if in order to change is realize that whatever I've got going on, whatever the circumstances are internally, externally, are part of this lovemaking session that I'm having with life. And what I need to do is I need to really, really, really relax and surrender and open up and be like, okay, all right, you scoundrel, you can touch me there. I'm willing to feel it. I'm willing to open up to it. I'm willing to be turned on about it. I'm willing to get off on it. I don't care what anybody thinks. I don't care if nobody else understands. I don't care if my parents never understand, my friends never understand, my whatever. It doesn't need to make sense. I'm just willing to feel you completely and receive you totally right now, life. And when I do that, and it helps to make it as sexual and orgasmic as I can. Although, again, it can also be heart-centered if that's what needs to happen. But generally, the sexual element really helps because we're Eros is life energy. We're all in an erotic relationship with life. So I let that Eros move through me in celebration of exactly whatever is happening right now, and my mind may think that it's so pathetic and it's so lame and my life is so gross and everybody sucks and I suck and my clothes are ugly and the place where I live sucks and my jobs, everything sucks. But if I can just realize that it's touching me, that all of this suckiness and jankiness and boringness, it's touching me in the most sensitive, hottest spot, and I can just receive it there and get off on it and fucking love it like the nasty, weird freak that I am, then suddenly I'm no longer experiencing myself as a victim of life. I'm no longer having this feeling of like, oh, this terrible stuff is happening to me and I can't stop it. Instead, I've become a full, basically like a consenting adult erotic participant in life. And it turns out that when I'm in that kind of willing union with life, however life is stroking me, everything is a lot easier and a lot more fun. And that's not to say that, death and illness aren't still things that happen, or grief, loss aren't still things that happen, but that even those can be experienced in a tender, flowing kind of way instead of a like miserable, constricted kind of way. So, yeah.
I think particularly that what you said about the experiencing it in a tender, flowing way, sort of a very feminine way. And also, I talk a lot about surrender, and I think in our society, it's like, oh, surrender makes you weak. I mean, that's a very deeply programmed response to the concept of surrender. But also what you said about surrender, meaning you can relax. You don't have to clench. You don't have to be tense. You can just sort of let go, let it flow, and enjoy and experience bliss at every turn, with the happiness, with the sadness, with the grief, with the joy, with the sorrow. All of it can be blissful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so fascinating. It's like this idea of receptivity, which is connected to surrender. I think it's been so shamed in that, and along with everything associated with anything feminine, has been treated like it's, for dum-dums or something, like it just is stupid and pointless and everything should just be rational and directive and all the time, which is just such a bizarre idea. And I think that really, so talking on an aeonic scale about like world level changes, and maybe your audience would be interested to hear a little bit about this. For when humanity was first getting started, for a while we had what could be called a matriarchal orientation, or an orientation that really celebrated the gifts of the larger self. The unconscious was really into dreams and visions and plant medicine and being in tune with cycles. And then for the most recent past few thousand years, we've had this era that super values rationality and science and sort of kind of masculine orientation to everything, to the point that, as we were just saying, everything feminine is treated like it's completely pointless and stupid and weak and should just go away. And the age that I believe that we're entering, it's what the magician Aleister Crowley called the Aeon of Horus, which means the Aeon of the child. So that's a symbol for the union of the matriarchal and the patriarchal consciousness, or the union of the conscious and the unconscious mind. Again, it's another metaphor for the alchemical marriage. And that gives me a lot of hope, because it's not like we all have to, I mean, I certainly know some hippie friends of mine who would love it for us all to just go back to the jungle and, not have the internet and electricity and whatnot. I'm really excited about the internet and electricity. I don't want to give them up. But we don't need to go back to a completely Paleolithic way of being in order to have a beautiful relationship with the divinity and the larger parts of ourselves. We can have a new kind of awareness that values receptivity, surrender, intuition, magic, just as much as it values reason and objectivity and technology.
Yeah, we can have it all.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both.
Exactly.
And I mean, we are still in the jungle. We always will be. I mean, we have the jungle of technology, we have the jungle of our minds, we have the jungle of modern society. I mean, it's all there. And I think too that we have everything we need. It's just, how are we interacting with it? How are we using it? Where are we letting it exist? Where are we letting it grow? Or are we saying, oh no, this part of me, it shouldn't be here. It needs to go away. And that's really causing a lot of pain and suffering in the world. But of course, I think also when you talk about the surrender, this relaxing, this receptivity, it's sort of this concept too of really like existing in this space where all of those things are true.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a beautiful, beautiful, blissful place to
It
live.
is.
Well, Carolyn, thank you so much for this extraordinary conversation. There were so many beautiful moments. I hope everyone was taking notes, and that I'm sure, like me, they will listen to it over and over again for all the incredible knowledge and wisdom that you delivered, as always. And your free gift for the audience is some free chapters for your book, so they can get started on some existential kink.
Yeah, the full instructions are there in the first 3 chapters, so they can go right ahead. Mm-hmm.
And I would just warn people that you only want to read that book if you really want to change your life and change your perspective and actually get all the things that you've always wanted.
Yes, I'm told that people throw it across the room a lot on their first reading of it.
Yeah, I mean, beware, like there's some ego bruising that goes on, but you know, the ego's tough, and it's ready, and we're all ready for this sort of progress, and you know, to fully gain access to like our full whole selves. It is time to get there.
Absolutely. Hell yes.
Yes. Well, thank you again, Carolyn, for the work that you do in the world. Thank you for the way that you have changed my life, the way you've changed so many people's lives, and in particular for being a part of Golden Threads.